G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe.
And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Saturday morning cartoons. We may be having, as usual, some slight technical difficulties, so I need to make sure that we are connecting with our audience. I am looking on my page here, and it's still trying to start, saying today this video should start soon. But I've already started a watch party, and I know that's running and going. And Jerome, you started your watch party too, right? Let me go ahead and let me put you up here for a sec. But I had a message from someone else, and I am actually looking on my phone here, and this thing has not started on the phone through Facebook Live, but the watch party is starting, so I know it's operating and going fine. So hopefully you guys can come in and give me some love here. No, I can't leave the page here to answer this question. My apologies, guys. But it looks like we're fine on the watch parties. Jerome, your watch party is starting fine, correct?
Yes, it is.
All righty. Now,
Just
as
making
you
some
guys,
minor corrections here.
yeah, you guys know that unless we have technical difficulties, the show is a bust. Okay, so you know, you got to have something go wrong.
Oh no! Wait a minute! No! Our last two shows where Rose and I hosted, there was no technical problems. I think it's when you host the show.
Well, I will take that, and I don't know. There's nothing I can say. Okay,
I think it's every time I host a show, except for the last time.
Yeah. Wait a minute now. I think I see. Yeah, the show's running. Oh, that's the watch party that I have going on.
I had a couple of problems with the watch party, but now it looks okay.
Yeah, same here. It took me a bit.
My good friend Chris King, and I hope people. Oh, wait. Let's try this.
How long have we been doing this show?
Oh, God knows, year or
2
so,
years?
Or 3,000. What's 3,000 years?
All I can say is I would have thought by now we would have gotten the technical glitches all worked out by now.
you would think, and I think there was a privacy setting that was automatically set itself. To be honest with you, I didn't have anything to do with it.
Facebook is updating some of their stuff that I've had to go back in and rechange also. Yeah,
because my privacy setting was set to. Yeah, it is. That privacy setting is still set. What is going on? Oh, wait a minute. That's not the show. Hold on.
Okay,
that privacy setting is correct.
According to this, we've got 6 people watching live.
Yes, and I wish they'd go ahead and
say something.
Type into our chat room. I know they may be on your watch party chat room.
No, they're not on mine.
I see nothing.
Oh, I'm hearing dings. That's not me.
No, that's me. And I started a watch party on my phone here, but I know people. You see nothing. So, as we just want to make sure before we continue with the show, is anyone out there? Ooh, what album is that?
Isn't that Floyd? Isn't that
good job? Good job. You're right. Good job.
That was high school, man. I got beat up on that one.
On Floyd?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a Floyd fan at first.
Oh my God.
Remember when I started high school? Well, wait a minute. Let me give you this. When I started high school, freshman in high school, I was still living on a military base. And if you haven't lived on a military base, country music reigned supreme in the 1970s and the 60s.
Awesome.
Okay. Suddenly now I'm being exposed to rock and roll. I have no idea who Floyd was. Okay.
Okay. I got a message from my friend basically telling me that he sees me, that he sees the show. So that's great. Okay. Because that's really who I really
we're up to 11 on the live.
On the live video comments, I see Cheryl saying good morning. I have Chris King saying good morning and Deborah saying hey.
Where do you see him? Because I don't see him on the show's comment box. But
on my watch party under live video comments.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
see any on mine either on the live video comments. So I don't know where how you're getting yours, Rose. But anyway,
Anyway, it's Facebook.
we're being recorded anyway.
We're being recorded so they can watch this again. And I am researching other platforms, as you guys know that there are certain platforms out there that really took off during this pandemic, and I just want to make sure it'll be able to handle everything that we do before I say going there.
I just did a TV show with Zoom.
Yes, I understand.
We did our monthly show that I do for a public access show, and
Right.
we did it all via Zoom.
Okay, I understand. We got it. All right, guys, stand by. Let's get on with this show. Let's go ahead and make this thing happen. Once again, this is Saturday Morning Cartoons, and for those that are new, and I know my friend is new watching this, we do this each and every Saturday morning. We basically focus on either a single entity, much like this morning's show, or we do a cornucopia of shows and based on a topic. Like last week, Jerome did sports and cartoons, which was very good. Rose, what did you do before that?
We did the CyberCon, and it was Hanna-Barbera, the secret gems of Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah. We did see. So, each and every week we do something different. And this week I chose this one as G.I. Joe. And my friend who's watching right now, Chris, good morning, Chris. I know Joe is big in your heart, and we have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to show. So let's go ahead and get this thing rocking here. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, was also known as Action Force in the UK. It is a half-hour American animated television series based on the toy line from Hasbro. The cartoon ran in syndication from 1983 to 1986. When Hasbro launched the G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line in 1982, alongside the Marvel Comics series, it commissioned Marvel Productions to produce a series of fully animated 30-second television commercials, which were broadcast in order to promote the toys and comics, beginning with an ad for the first issue that aired throughout the spring of 1982. The popularity of these commercials led to the production of a 5-part G.I. Joe miniseries, which aired in 1983, later known as the MASS, M-A-S-S device, when it re-aired during the series syndication. The plot centers on the MASS device, a powerful matter transporter, and G.I. Joe and Cobra's race around the world to acquire the 3 catalytic elements which power the machine. A second 5-part miniseries followed in 1984, The Revenge of Cobra, with a similar plot that involved the Joes and Cobras traveling around the world to recover the scattered fragments of Cobra's new weather-controlling weapon, the Weather Dominator. Now, certain things that you guys are going to be hearing from me during this broadcast, certain videos you're going to be seeing from me there are, in fact, 13 original G.I. Joes. And we're going to go through a little bit of that. Probably not all 13, because I stole this from somebody's program on YouTube. But it's so good. People do documentaries a hell of a lot better than I do. And I just really appreciate the stuff that it goes with a lot of research. So they're really, really good in the research portion of things they want to do and things they want to talk about. But one of the good things I want to show you guys that I don't think a lot of people have seen, and that is basically the men and women, believe it or not, who were responsible for the creation of Joe. And I am plugging that into the loop right now and I have you guys take a look at that. And let's see, get you up on the screen here. Oh, I got to drop this and get that up. Take a look at this. Well, I'll try to play as much of it as we want until I, realize that you guys are bored. So,
it's cartoons. How can we be bored?
I know.
The story of G.I. Joe is the ultimate fantasy of good versus evil.
Well, to paraphrase the great late Wally Wood, there's the good guys and the bad guys, and the job of the good guys is to kick the butts of the bad guys.
And so the Joe team is the great liberator of all things good from all things evil, all across the face of the globe. What's wrong with that?
With the launch of the comic book, it had a real impact on boys all across the country, and they were surprised and delighted when the toy came. And this was, the first year of Joe. So G.I. Joe became this revitalized new character in a new form. And really early in the fall of that year, we recognized that we had uncorked the phenomenon that had existed in the Joe franchise from the beginning, but now we recaptured it again. And so we went to Hasbro, we discussed with them and proposed to them that we do something that had never been done again, which was to do a mini-series in animation for the G.I. Joe character and for the G.I. Joe team.
What Joe and Tom had figured out was we can have an action squad. We're not going to make it an army show. Vietnam was still hovering around. Granted, it was the Reagan administration, but they wanted to have G.I. Joe be a counter-terrorist force, and Cobra was this sort of motley terrorist group.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained special mission force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
So we went out to California and we started talking to writers, and we were particularly impressed with Ron Friedman.
Hasbro, Griffin McCall, were looking for a writer who didn't write animation. They wanted someone who was writing for real television, live television, and they interviewed a lot of people, and I evidently got their interest, and they gave me the job.
He had a sense of design. He really understood the whole idea that what we wanted, because basically his experience was doing live action television action adventure. So he had a lot of experience in that way, and he loved the idea that we wanted to treat it like a live action miniseries. So
Okay, and we are going to go back to that later on, but I want to continue with this production of Joe. I'll keep your thoughts there for a minute there, Jerome. I know you so well. G.I. Joe was promoted to a full series in 1985 with an initial order for a first season of 55 more episodes in order to make up the required 65 episodes for syndication. This season began with the third Friedman-penned 5-part adventure, The Pyramid of Darkness. The story sees most of the existing cast from the 2 previous miniseries held captive by Cobra, while a new assortment of characters, that is the new 1985 range of toys, thwart Cobra's attempts to surround the Earth with electricity negating Pyramid of Darkness. Both the new and old characters then share the spotlight throughout the course of the remaining 50 episodes of the series, which were primarily standalone single episode adventures with the occasional 2-part. Okay, thoughts? Go ahead, Jerome.
Well, first off, this show created a lot of controversy. Okay. The FCC had to make changes in their policy because that this was a blatant sell the toy show. And under the Reagan administration, the FCC changed the rules about children's television.
Right.
Okay. This was the big one. I mean, this was in the news all over the place.
Right. Sure.
Time. And well, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish your thought.
And one of the comments that they made about Joe and Vietnam and all that, I have to tend to disagree from an audience point of view. I don't know about it from the production, but from an audience point of view, nobody was thinking about Vietnam. They were thinking about the disaster in the Iranian desert and that they wanted a special forces group that could work and win and everything else. That was more in the lines of the kids' memory than Vietnam, which was more in the adults' minds.
And I agree wholeheartedly with that because we were, even though it was still in the 80s, the 80s was basically the introduction of terrorism.
Yes.
Terrorism on our shores, kidnapping.
Mid-East terrorism.
Terrorism on our shores, kidnapping our officials, things of that nature. And I know that there was a creation of more elite groups. I don't think SEALs were, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think the SEALs were produced until probably around about that era. But prior to that, and I'm going, well, let's go back to Vietnam. There were Green Berets, and that's what we knew. I think there were commandos, but then going back to World War II, we did have guerrillas, commandos, and that sort of special forces mainly for the World War II era at that time. So bringing G.I. Joe forward as an elite force was basically to battle terrorism. And I agree with you 100%. It didn't have anything to do with Vietnam.
Right. This was from like I said, from an audience point of view, I can't speak to the guys who produced it, but from an audience point of view, that what is. The 80s introduced us, and the late 70s introduced us to the Mideast terrorism of the Palestinians and everything in that whole area.
Right.
And we had already had, during the 70s, we had a lot of internal terrorism. I mean, how many people from that grew up in the 60s can forget the kidnapping of Patty Hearst and all the stuff that we had in the 60s?
Right.
But also in the 70s, we had the Red Brigade bombing, and the in the 1972 Munich Olympics, we had the IRA. So terrorism was there, but it really got its, I hate to say publicity, it's not the right word, but it really got into the mainstream during the 80s. In the early 80s, and Iran really got into the consciousness, and the kids really noticed it, because I mean, I remember I was just becoming a teenager, and that was really in my head when I was watching this, more so than Vietnam. And from having grown up in the military, I can tell you the commandos, the SEALs, all that had existed, just hadn't entered the psyche of the American culture.
Gotcha. Rose, thoughts?
Well, I was very young in the early 80s, but my husband actually has a picture of him as a kid holding a sign saying "Free the hostages." So that I remember that, and I remember when they bombed everybody eating dinner, and I think that was was that in Iraq or Iran? I don't remember, but
which bombing?
Beirut. The one where they were eating dinner, and they drove the car in and blew everybody up.
The Marine barracks in Beirut.
Yep. That I remember. I remember that really. But so yeah, I have to agree that the G.I. Joe series really had nothing to do with Vietnam at all. So
that's correct.
Yeah.
I agree 100% on that part. Okay,
those are just my thoughts on it. Okay.
All right, so it's a phenomenal amount of episodes that were filmed. We know they were 30 minutes, so if you want to, cut that in half. Jerome, I'm going to mute you, buddy. I think you're having a conniption here. I said I was going to mute you, buddy, because you were having a conniption on air.
Sorry, it's allergy season.
Understood. All right, stand by. And we know that during that time there was a lot of terrorism, as we'd already spoken about. Going on. I'm trying to get back to my note, and I was mentioning that the amount of orders that they needed for syndication, which was 65, being that it was 30-minute shows, if you double that came to what, 32.5, something like that. Still, most seasonal episodes for 1 hour programs were 60 minutes. Okay, or 22 episodes, shall I say, around about that time. So this still was a phenomenal amount of orders that these guys produced, and it was just fantastic. All right, so a second season of 30 episodes followed in 1986, beginning with a fourth 5-part story, Arise, Serpenter, Arise, in which Cobra scientist, I'm not going to say his name, well, Dr. Mindbender was his name. It was inspired by a dream, uses the DNA of history's most ruthless conquerors and rulers to genetically engineer Serpenter, who upserts the Cobra Commander's leadership of Cobra. This mini-series introduced the new 1986 range of toys into the story, which were at the center of most stories, blah, blah, blah. I won't read any more of what I wrote. I mean, I will read some of it later, but I'm not going to continue with it. I'm starting to sound like a Jerome here, but so there was just
a little more.
Yeah, the truth hurts, doesn't it? So anyway, so G.I. Joe has so much. I want to go ahead and hit you guys with just a little bit more of this that we were watching prior. So listen up for a second, and I'll stop it again.
One of the things we wanted to do was to capture the exotic locations and set things in different parts of the world to give it that real excitement, because we're going to run it over 5 days, and so that would enable you to feature different members of the G.I. Joe team and different adversaries.
I said, I've got to make them characters. They have got to resonate. The design of the characters is great. How are you going to marry the interests of those kids that have to fall in love with the characters, as I did with Superman and Batman and Green Lantern? How do you grab them if you don't create characters?
We'll never forget you. What you've done, Snake Eyes. We owe you our lives.
And what's great about these characters is that they're not superhuman. They're not running around in capes. They're not they're not endowed with alien powers. So every kid can think, gosh, I could grow up and train really, really hard and work really, really hard so that I can be a member of G.I. Joe.
Each of the characters got to have a really, great, unique personality. And I think Larry Hama did a lot of those ahead of time.
All the characters sort of fulfill these little niches that comprise this little group. That's the core of the fantasy about wanting to belong and have these friends and buddies.
There were big families of bad guys and big families of good guys.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there because I want to ask both you guys a question, and this is a test. This is a quiz, and since I don't have faces in my chat room, I can't see anybody answer, so I'm going to have to rely on chat parties or whatever. I'm going to go with you first, Jerome. Oops, let me get you down here. Hold on for a sec. Get you off the screen. Come on, press. Bear with me, guys. I'm trying to get. There you go. I'm going to go with you, Jerome. I want you to quickly name as many Joe members as you can, because the next segment I'm going to be showing you guys, and they're going to be the 13 original Joes. So how many can you name, Jerome?
Duke, Snake Eyes. That's it. Seriously, I was not a big watcher. I was not a big watcher of Joe. I'll be honest. Okay.
Man, I thought you were deep in thought there for a minute. I thought you were kind of like, "Oh, I got this."
No, I was looking something up, but no, I couldn't. To be honest, I couldn't remember to tell you. I mean, I remember Sergeant Slaughter they brought in later on because of the wrestling and all that. But
yeah. Duke and Snake. How about you, Rose? How many can you name?
Well, there's Shipwreck, which was my favorite character, and Snow Job.
It's Snow Job?
Snow Job. He might have been second season. That was the Arctic one.
The Arctic guy.
Oh yes, I know what you're saying.
But
right.
After Snake Eyes, I'm lost.
Well, it's amazing, and I think they had over 100, close to 200 characters, but that was toy based.
I gotta admit, I actually liked more of Cobra. I know more about Cobra than I did the Joes.
Well, only because there were maybe 4 main characters of Cobra. Everybody else were flunkies. But
you gotta have good minions.
Well, you got the Cobra Commander right there. You got Destro, and then I already mentioned Serpentor, which I thought was the badasses of them all.
Hey, Mark. I see the live comments. Chris King said Scarlett and Rock and Roll as characters.
Good job, Chris. But wait a minute. Who was first, Scarlett or Lady J?
I think Scarlett was.
Yeah, that's going to be an answer for a question for Chris, since he's the expert on G.I. Joe, believe it or not. I tried to get him to host, but he couldn't come in to co-host with it. But
I mean, you forgot on the Cobra side, you forgot the Baroness.
Oh man. Why is it the evil ones are the hottest ones?
Two words.
Okay, go ahead.
Femme fatale.
Oh, very good. Good job. I got to applaud you on that one. Very good.
Chris said Scarlett was first.
Scarlett was like my freaking baby sister. That's I mean, come on. Everybody's drawn like women, and I appreciate that. But then you do Baroness, and it's like, holy mackerel. I surrender.
You also got to remember a couple of things, okay? All right, so it's 1980s. We've got the Reagan Revolution happening. The military is now suddenly becoming more popular than it was during the Vietnam era. And you're also now reading about these femme fatale Russian spies.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that in the press at the time. So that's why the Baroness is the way she is.
Hot and sexy CIA agents or whatever.
KGB, man. KGB.
KGB. And this is Scarlett right here.
I love Scarlett.
Yeah, well, that's an updated outfit, though, because we've seen her. I think she was more reddish or orange in her. We'll find her again through my my catalog here, my gallery. Oh,
I love the fact that she had a crossbow, man. That was always a cool thing for me with her.
Yeah, no damn crossbows ain't gonna stop no bullets.
Hey, Terry popped in and he says Duke, General Hawk, Scarlett, Roadblock, Snake Eyes, and Gung Ho.
Very good.
Ooh.
I remember Gung Ho. And of course, believe it or not, I have a little story on Hawk. And Hawk was never in the first G.I. Joe episode. He didn't show up until season 2 in all actuality, but he was in fact Duke's boss, you know. And Hawk was portrayed by oh help guys, oh my god, used to be married to Meg Ryan. Last movie was probably Flight of the Phoenix. He was in the G.I. Joe motion picture with The Rock.
Dennis Quaid?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I forgot he was married to Meg Ryan. I hear Meg Ryan, and the only thing I think of is Tom Hanks.
I had an original crush on Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan met me first, okay? I love Meg Ryan. But yes, Dennis Quaid was portrayed, or rather, Hawk was portrayed by Dennis Quaid in the 2 G.I. Joe movies. I think it was only the second one. I'm not sure if he was in the first G.I. Joe movie.
Yes, he was.
He was? Okay.
Yes, he was. He was in the movie. He was the general.
Yeah, but look at this. Look at that Scarlett. And that's Scarlett. Now that could be a femme fatale right there. All right.
Oh,
yeah, that'll make me think of her not being my baby sister. No. Okay, so what is it that I wanted to show you guys?
The characters. We were talking about the character list.
Yeah, stand by for this one. I gotta hide that one. I think I gotta bring that one up on the screen. Where are you, Solo? All right, watch this. I may have to fast forward it a little bit. We'll see. Any second now.
Say the name G.I. Joe to a Gen Xer, and the casual fan will probably yell, "Yo, Joe!" and then rattle off names like Duke, Flint, Lady J, and Shipwreck.
I'd rather save yours.
God, I hate Shipwreck. It makes sense. For most people, G.I. Joe is defined by the Sunbow cartoon, and that's a shame, because contrary to what many know, G.I. Joe didn't start with Duke, or Roadblock, or Destro. G.I. Joe's relaunch as a real American hero started in 1982 with a stellar comic book by Larry Hama that had a completely different continuity from the cartoon and lasted years beyond it. It all started with 13 soldiers whose design evoked the look and feel of the U.S. Army in the 1980s. Dark green, Army uniforms, fairly realistic weapons. It reminds you of films like Red Dawn or First Blood or even Tank.
G.I. Joe has been hero. G.I. Joe.
I'm continually surprised that a lot of people and fans of G.I. Joe from my generation have never heard of these characters. So allow me to introduce you to the first 13 members of G.I. Joe. Clayton Abernathy, Denver, Colorado, codename Hawk. West Point graduate, top of his class. The original leader of G.I. Joe wasn't Duke, it was Hawk. Now you might think that you know who Hawk is because you've seen the G.I. Joe movie. That's actually a promoted version of the original Hawk character. That's the general. Hawk in the original 13 was a lower ranking officer, but he was still the head of the original pantheon of G.I. Joes. The cool thing about Hawk was that he didn't come on a card. He came with the mobile missile system, which is this massive ground-to-air strike missile tripod.
I want to go there.
Out computer. He stood beside it authoritatively and I guess dealt out death, or used it to get the other Joes to follow his orders. Alvin Kibbe, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, codename Breaker, communications officer and expert in covert electronics. Breaker is an interesting character in the original 13 Joes. You probably saw him all the time on the cartoon, but didn't realize that he was one of the original 13 members of the toy line. Breaker is generally depicted in the cartoon with a gray uniform, and he's always at the communications station with his headset on. But Breaker was cool because, like the rest of the 13 Joes, he had a real function that the military would have in an infantry squad. He was the radio guy. So Breaker is actually a useful addition to G.I. Joe for those realistic missions. Lonzo Wilkinson, Detroit, Michigan, codename Stalker, former gang leader, fluent in 5 languages. By today's standards, Stalker would be classified as the token black guy in G.I. Joe. But at the time the original 13 members came out, Stalker had a useful function as the second in command to Hawk. Stalker was the point man on their missions, while Hawk stayed back and gave out the orders. Stalker actually served a big role in the original animated miniseries as well, The Mass Device. He was one of the most active members of the group at that point. So Stalker got lucky because he was a strong character in the beginning of G.I. Joe's comic book series, and he was a strong character in the beginning of G.I. Joe's animated series, which was rare. Robert Graves, Columbus, Ohio, codename Grunt, straight up soldier, cool under fire. I've known more than a few collectors and G.I. Joe fans who think that Grunt is just a troop builder figure, like a stormtrooper or a Cobra enemy. But in reality, in the comic book, Grunt was a specific character with a real personality. Larry Hama actually wrote into the comic book series later that Grunt was discharged from G.I. Joe honorably and then went off to finish college. He was a fleshed out three-dimensional human being, but for most people, Grunt is just a generic army soldier. He's got the M16 and the Musette bag. He looks like a background character in a Vietnam movie. So I guess depending on what your priorities are, you can see Grunt as either a unique individual or you can just see him as background fodder for your toy collection. Ralph Pulaski, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, codename Steeler, comes from a blue-collar family, driver of the Mobat. Unlike the Star Wars toy line from Kenner, G.I. Joe actually included pilots and drivers with their vehicles, which was really cool. Steeler is one of the most famous original drivers. If you were lucky enough to get Steeler, then that means you got the Mobat tank with him, and you were one lucky kid. The Mobat's sitting behind me right now, and it's easily the coolest tank Hasbro ever made for G.I. Joe. The thing was motorized, it had rubber treads, it could drive over anything. Books, blankets, your pets. James Bond.
I'm just going to do the first 5 guys, and then I'll bring some more up. But that is at least the first 5 of the 13 original G.I. Joes. Go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, well, Grunt, about Grunt, okay. Most soldiers of a certain lower rank are just known as grunts. That's a military slang term.
Correct.
Just, you know, so I don't know if many people know that.
Yeah, here's Rose's boyfriend.
Yeah.
She likes the parrot. It's very pirate.
I was about to say, man, you deal with the man, you got to deal with the bird.
My husband's former Navy, and he had no bird. So
yeah, but does he have a big ass tattoo on his chest? Huh?
No tattoos.
He was a squid.
No, I think Rose, I think you're gonna have to go out and get a toy parrot for him to put on his shoulder.
Yeah, get a toy parrot.
Either that or an eye patch.
All right, we're looking good. So we still got some more G.I. Joe to go through here. Like I said before, with the second season, had 30 episodes in 86, based on a 4-piece or a 5-part story, shall I say. It basically fleshed out the leadership of Cobra being Serpentor. So you basically weren't looking. Cobra Commander was still around, but Serpentor. Man, why couldn't they just call him Snake?
Because they had Snake Eyes already.
God, okay, that's true. That's true. All right, so this miniseries introduced the new 1986 range of toys into a story, which were at the center of most stories across the rest of the season. In particular, the miniseries debuting former WWF and then current AWA professional wrestler Sergeant Slaughter as a member.
Sergeant Slaughter,
as a member of the Joes, played by himself, which I think is really freaking cool. It was two-handed here, because you saw Slaughter as live action wrestler Slaughter doing his follow-up or his setup for the upcoming episodes, and sometimes you see him coming in the commercials, and then you literally see him as the animated character of Badass Sergeant Slaughter in the cartoon. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I don't know who else does that. Can you think of anybody, Rose or Jerome?
Yes.
Oh, go for it.
In the 1980s, at about the same time Sergeant Slaughter did it, there was a little-known show with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, but did he come in live action before?
Yes, he did. There was some live action, then there was the cartoon, and so on.
I remember.
It was incredibly forgettable.
Yes, it was. Junkyard Dog there and all those other characters.
I mean, the WWF really got into 1980s, and so they went all over. And Slaughter pretty much was the most famous of them for the animation.
Yes,
everyone else is forgettable.
Yeah.
I mean, we all remember Hulk Hogan for a variety of other reasons, but if you talk the 80s, people remember Sergeant Slaughter, Hulk Hogan, and they might mention one or two others, and that's about it.
Gotcha. Going on to comments here, since I can't see him on the screen. Brady says the voice of Cobra Commander was played by Chris Latta. Also voiced Starscream on the Transformers and starred in 2 episodes of Star Trek TNG. Brady, get a life, man. Get a life. Oh, God. I wouldn't have known that, but that's great information, though. That's really nice to be introduced to that. But you guys got anything in your watch party comments that you want to relay?
No, I got nothing.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and
I do want to bring up 2 historical points that happened.
Make them quick.
All right, in '82 was the invasion of Grenada.
Okay.
Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood, that whole thing. And then in and Rose was right, in 1983 was the bombing of Lebanon in the barracks. And I believe those had huge impacts for kids to watch G.I. Joe.
Got it. And probably so. I agree. It was military. Let's watch a little bit more of this piece here.
How do you work with huge numbers? What I created was a kind of little triads or pairs who would go off together. And thereby we got to know who these characters were because they played off one another.
He did an outline first of what he had in mind, and we really liked it. Showed that to Hasbro, and then at that point we went to script, and then we started, casting, and we started nailing down the kind of voices that we wanted.
No sign of Cobra. How does it look from ground level, Scarlett?
Clear here, Duke, but I don't believe it'll stay that way.
Me neither. What's the situation on your side, Flint? So far, so good, but things could still get hairy between here and headquarters.
The audition process for G.I. Joe was really interesting. It was classic, almost old Hollywood. Walter Burr, who is still around, and as he will tell you, was the youngest tank commander in all of World War II, Captain Wally Burr, became a cartoon director. And he got the series G.I. Joe. And he was a terrific director. He directed for a lot of psychological detail that really hadn't been done so much in TV cartoons before. And he had us lined up around the block outside his studio in North Hollywood. And the script girls were there and the producers were there, and they passed out scripts, and there were literally 50 of us standing on the street.
The casting process is first getting sketches, finding out what the hell is going on.
They had for us simple preliminary drawings from the artists.
And the guy says, this guy looks thin-faced or fat-faced or whatever. And a picture is essential to giving the actor something to kick off on. So he gets into that.
And ultimately, you get in the booth and you're behind glass and they go, okay, go. And you're looking at about 12 people standing around because there weren't enough chairs and a big mixing board and a console like a rock and roll studio. And you do your thing. And then Wally Burr or one of the writers or somebody from Sunbow said, a little deeper, a little faster, a little smarter, a little tougher.
I always like to start out by saying, whatever you see or feel in terms of what you see in the text and what you see in the picture, give it to me, see what. And I say, okay, got another one for a second character? And I'll say, now try, and I'll give him what I would like to do.
Okay, now you're in a fight. That kind of thing. And if you hadn't done that in your shower before, you'd have to dig deep.
Then I'd probably give him 8, 10 people on any given character and say, I'm happy with these, would you like to make your selection? And I'd get the word back in a few days, and then we'd make a deal with arrange with the agent to say, we have now selected so-and-so, so we'll be on the lookout, we'll be recording soon.
And then we started.
Okay, I'm going to cut that short. We got 2 minutes left on that, but I want to keep the conversation going between all of us, and we can always pop back in. But this is a very, very interesting thing, especially with us being Saturday morning cartoons, how we're literally getting the thought processes and the execution of people who are just supplying a very, very important role with every cartoon character, which is the voices. And it's really interesting how the first gentleman, I forget his name, but I guess he was the voice director, whatever, saying, look, this guy is skinny, this guy is fat, this whatever, and then trying to pick a voice to go with the character that you're looking at. What do you got, Rose? Any thoughts on that at all?
Well, I find it very interesting because with voice actors, they have to really reach, for certain characters, and to have a description in front of them, I think would really help, with how they're going to resonate, their voice.
Man, I bet the voice actor for Snake Eyes was pissed. It's like, but can I say something? Just one word? Go ahead, Jerome, with thoughts. What you got?
No, it's standard. It's standard act. It's if you've ever seen casting calls for live, for shows, that's you're too fat, you're too thin, whatever. And voice actors are the same thing. It needs to be deeper. It needs to be, you need to change your accent. And voice actors have the same problem of casting calls as regular actors do. Only they don't have to put on makeup or dress nice, as one of my favorite voice actors said.
Yeah, but if you can imagine this cast, and I'm sure all these people that are up on the screen right now, and I don't think ever were in the cartoon series, but let's give a thought of these. Let's say this first 5 right here. If you can imagine the type of people they would have to interview just to come up with the face of, I was about to call her Lady Jane, but it's not a Scarlett. And actually they only need 4 voices for this picture right here.
Actually, they could get away with 2 actors on that right there.
Yeah, that's true. And okay, so Jerome, which actor do you think you could qualify for if you were chosen as an actor, voice actor for any of these characters?
Oh, I could be Duke because I have a Midwestern twang in my voice.
Duke. Rose, what would you see Jerome's character being as any of the characters in Joe?
Oh, wow. You really put me on the spot there.
I sure did, darling. I love doing that. I tell you what, why don't we give you a little bit of help?
Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Codename Grand Slam. Sci-fi and comic book junkie. Operator Jump Jetpack.
Hold on. We gotta hear that again because that was freaking hilarious.
You put that in real well there.
Operator Jump Jetpack. Grand Slam is an
no, I missed it. Hold on.
Junkie.
Here it is.
James Barney, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Codename Grand Slam. Sci-fi and comic book junkie. Operator Jump Jetpack. Grand Slam is an interesting member of the G.I. Joe team because he's one of the only characters that was visibly changed from the 1982 straight arm versions into the 1983 swivel arm versions. Originally, Grand Slam had these red protective pads all over his uniform, and he came with a large artillery cannon. But in 1983, they changed it so that he had these silver pads and a visored helmet, and he came with the Jump Jetpack, which is arguably a lot cooler.
Yeah.
Mark Brenson, Chicago, Illinois. Codename Short Fuse. Comes from a military family. Certified math genius. I wish I had something cool to say about Short Fuse. He's not a bad character. As a matter of fact, what makes him great is that he fills another traditional role in an infantry squad. He's the mortar and artillery soldier. Again, very realistic roles for these characters up front, not caricatures at all. Short Fuse had a strong role in the beginning of the comic book series, but like so many of the original 13, he was slowly pushed off to the sidelines as Hasbro introduced new figures. Lance Steinberg, Asbury Park, New Jersey. Codename Clutch. Street racer. Greases his hair with motor oil. Chews on the same toothpick for months. Clutch is one of my favorite G.I. Joes because he was my first G.I. Joe figure. And because he was a driver, he came with the Vamp Jeep, which had the big machine gun on the back. Clutch didn't have as prominent a role in the cartoon after it got going, but in the comic book, he was always a strong character and tended to evolve. Larry Hama paid a lot of attention to him. His second incarnation, he became the driver of the Vamp Mark II, which was the desert version of the Jeep, which was really cool because it had doors and a roof, and it had a missile launcher on the back. Rafael Melendez, New York City, New York. Codename Zap. Bazooka soldier, demolitions expert. Zap is the G.I. Joe bazooka soldier, not to be confused with Zap Brannigan from Futurama or Zap Rousdower from The Final Sacrifice. Zap is cool because not only did he come with this massive bazooka weapon, Zap is also interesting in hindsight because Zap is Hispanic. And I like the fact that he's not a caricature. Like everybody else in the original 13, he wears the same standard uniform they do, and they're all equal. I think that's really cool. I think it speaks to something that was really progressive that was going on with G.I. Joe at that time that quickly just got dumbed down, and then we ended up with characters that were visibly different from one another racially. And I'm not trying to put political correctness into this video at all.
Yes, you are.
I'm just saying that as far as subtlety and a deft hand for design goes, and Larry Hama's writing, Zap is a much more interesting and enriching character to G.I. Joe than the ones that came after him.
Okay, let's stop it there. And let's go back to my original question going to Rose, that if you were to place Jerome with any G.I. Joe character, and I just threw 5 more at you, so don't sit here and say to me, I don't know any of these guys.
Oh no. His new nickname is going to be Grand Slam.
Grand Oh my God. Okay, Grand Slam. It was only the sailor that had the beard. We only saw one G.I. Joe character, which was Shipwreck, who had a beard, correct?
Yes.
No, Clutch had a beard.
Clutch did?
Oh no! Oh yeah, you're right. Clutch did have a beard. Okay, well that's good. Could you have a beard in the Army?
No,
Yes,
it
I think you can.
depended upon which units you were in. Special Forces wanted you to have beards because then you blend in with local peoples. The Navy did it because you didn't want to waste fresh water, for shaving.
That makes sense.
And again, it all depended upon where you were. If you were a tank driver or if you were an infantry guy, no, you shaved.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, Mark, I've got a couple of great comments I want to share with you.
Please.
Garrett says that his drill sergeant was a dead ringer for Sergeant Slaughter, and he says he's pretty sure that was intentional.
Smokey the Bear hats. Yeah.
Good job, my boy Garrett. Good.
And Terry says he can definitely voice Snake Eyes.
Yeah. Well, who would my voice go to? Can anybody size me up with anybody? You think?
Like I said, I'm not that good with. I'm not that good with
voice
shows.
is that plain? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, you got a great voice. You're like the narrator voice.
Okay.
There you go. You could be the narrator.
Yeah, oh, speaking of narrators, thank you for the segue. I really appreciate that. And I want you guys to stand by, okay, because we are going to be moving on to the movie, okay? But I wanted to, get as many of these characters and things out of the way before we end the show. Go ahead, Jerome. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say the original 13. If you look at what he's been talking about, remember Joe started off as the 12-inch G.I. Joes, and you can see similarities from those 12-inch and the roles they all played with the original 13. That they stayed true to military stuff from the original 12 inches.
I collected G.I. Joes, but I really think that G.I. Joes were a little too expensive for me at that time to collect as many as I had. So my mother started me out with an action figure called Big Jim.
Yeah, I remember Big Jim.
And of course, they literally twice the size of any G.I. Joe, but affordable because you only needed to buy one. It was just Jim and Big Jim, and then you just buy all the accessories for Big Jim. And G.I. Joe, oh my God, wasn't it G.I. Joe to start out with the Kung Fu grip?
G.I. Joe had Kung Fu grip in the 70s.
Yes, they had the Kung Fu grip, and I'm like,
and it was a rubber preformed, and you could open up his fingers. Yeah, it would, because I played with those as a kid.
All right, segueing, like I wanted to segue to, and that is the voice, and I did play the opening of G.I. Joe, I think already. When they say G.I. Joe is a what did they say? He said was a
Special Forces and stuff like that.
I used to know it all, be honest with you. Well, he was also the voice for the 1950s Superman. He was the narrator for the 1950 Adventures of Superman series. That voice that does the G.I. Joe. He was the narrator for the George Reeves Superman
Jackson
series. Beck. Yes, thank you.
And he was the announcer for the radio show also.
Yes, and we will be hearing him shortly as soon as we get through.
He was also Bluto.
Yes, he was also the voice of Bluto as well. As soon as we get through all the action figures, we'll go ahead and move on to the movies. But there's still a lot of interesting stuff, and as usual, we can't necessarily do this much in one show. But we try to do as much as we possibly can to keep you guys interested. This one is almost over, So, and we got 3 minutes left. So let's go ahead and final this one out so I can put it to bed.
We did session after session after session after session, and it was probably the greatest experience I've ever had in this business. Being with all these fabulous voices, and they started bringing sort of demi-celebs in, and these old character actors from TV that I'd known years ago as a kid, with these great voices, and suddenly there they were, chomping virtual cigars, and, playing characters with weird names.
Nothing stops them, Roadblock. If we quit, they win. Then we better not poop out. Let go of my legs, sucker.
We did 3 years of launching in the fall a mini-series. But before the third one was done, we had already started work on the series, because it takes a long time to pull that all together. We opened up an LA office. We got a great team of
Those
writers.
are the same damn shirts, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
Steve Gerber, who was like a legend in the comic book field, and Flint Dilley, who became our story editor. I think he edited 55 G.I. Joe series episodes, and Buzz Dixon, and just a really great team of people.
We had really good writers. I remember Christy Marks gave me a script. This is kind of like my job test. Christy Marks gave me the script. And I read it and I said, guys, I like being paid and everything, but there's really nothing I'd change. I mean, this is, the script's just true to its own vision of the thing. It's just all there. And they said, well, we thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I guess that was the right answer.
We can't get inside. Now we can.
G.I. Joe was interesting. It was just a show for me that from the first time I saw it to when I left it, I had exactly one vision for the show. I did a lot of weird stuff in there, but I just knew what that show was, and it was very natural, and it was very easy, and I don't remember any disagreements between anybody about what the show should be.
Oh, okay. So, believe it or not, this is a 3-part show.
Documentary?
Yeah, documentary. Thank you. And luckily, that was the first, and that was, a real good. And if anybody wants to look at the rest of it, you just go on Facebook, or I'm sorry, YouTube, like I did, and you Google the history of G.I. Joe, and you'll see a number of videos, much like the one here where we got all the Joe members listed off, and that's how I found that. What we're going to do now, since we're heading up to our hour, we're going to go ahead and finish off with these final original 13, and then we're going to quickly move into the movie, which I actually went to the theater to see. That and the Transformers movies, which I'm going to segue into that as well. So let's go ahead and finish this. We're not going to go. Looks like we're not going to make it through all, but do what
Anthony Gambello, Lodi, California. Codename Flash. Electronics expert. Laser rifle operator. Flash is my absolute favorite G.I. Joe of all time. Not just of the original 13 members, but of all the G.I. Joes. He wasn't used very much, which is a shame because he's really cool, but I will say he's in the intro of the original cartoon miniseries of each episode, which I think is awesome. And in the comic book, he was used pretty strongly up front, not as strongly as a lot of the other characters, and then he slowly sort of petered out like the rest of them did. I think the reason I liked Flash so much was not just because he was one of my first G.I. Joes, and I know that has a lot to do with it, but because he just looked so unique. He had the red protective pads like Grand Slam and the visored helmet, but he also had this cool backpack with a laser rifle attached to it via cable. Craig McConnell, Malibu, California. Codename, Rock and Roll. Surfer, weightlifter, guitarist, machine gunner. I remember when I was a little kid and G.I. Joe had first come out, that Rock and Roll was one of the most popular action figures for kids to get because he was the machine gunner. He had the 2 bullet bandoliers crosswise over his chest, and he came with a massive bipod machine gun, and he was always seen riding around on the Ram motorcycle. He had the blonde beard, and he was the surfer guy. Rock and Roll was one of the most memorable of the original 13 Joes for kids who remember them on the toy aisles.
I remember him.
Atlanta, Georgia.
There she is.
Codename, Scarlett.
Yeah, baby.
Martial arts prodigy, earned her first black belt at 15. Scarlett is probably one of those characters you think you know because you've seen the cartoon. She's the redhead with the ponytail and the crossbow. But if you don't know the original 13 Joes and you don't know Larry Hama's comic book, you probably don't know much about Scarlett at all. Now, in the cartoon, Scarlett was depicted as having a relationship with Duke, sort of a sophomoric romance type of relationship. But in the comic book, it was never that way. Scarlett's core relationship was with Snake Eyes, and that was the central dramatic direction of the comic book throughout its whole run. Scarlett always maintained her identity apart from Snake Eyes, despite the fact that she was his girlfriend. Scarlett is a strong, fearless character. She has just immovable conviction, and the courage that she exhibits in the comic book is, to say the least, incredible. A lot of people remember Snake Eyes as having a wolf companion named Timber, but that's not actually Snake Eyes' first incarnation. His first role was as a demolitions and espionage commando. He didn't have a sword, he wasn't a ninja, he did know 12 martial arts, but I think he was a lot cooler because he was more unique. The 1980s was the ninja craze, but Snake Eyes wasn't, by definition, a ninja at that point. He became a rival for Storm Shadow later in the comic book, and in the cartoon, he frankly got shoved off to the side because he didn't speak. In the comic book, on the other hand, because it's a still visual medium, Snake Eyes was perfect and he quickly rose to the top. They actually devoted an entire issue to him, issue number 21, which is famous because there's no dialogue, and it's one of the best G.I. Joe issues ever written. Brilliant. I like these guys a lot because they weren't the caricatures that came soon afterward, and they were some of my first Joes. I find these 13 characters to be more interesting than their successors.
It's here, the G.I. Joe collection. Infantry trooper, codename Grunt. Bazooka soldier, codename Zap. Motor soldier,
That was a really good
laser rifle trooper, codename Flash.
Yeah.
Codename Stalker. Communications officer, codename Breaker. Machine gunner, codename Rock and Roll. Counterintelligence, codename Scarlett. Commando, codename Snake Eyes. Each sold separately. G.I. Joe.
So those were your original 13, as done by this gentleman in his video here, which I really thought was brilliant because he obviously did his research on it. So that was pretty good. Okay, questions for, of course, the Kartoon Krew that's watching us right now, and of course for my fantastic co-hosts that I have here now. Who would you want to be? And Rose, I'm giving you the opportunity to transfer into a male if you can't come up with just 2 chicks. Well, 3 if you want to go on the other side.
She's going to be the Baroness.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Jerome, let's get through you. And who do you think would be your favorite Joe? What Joe would you want to be if you were considered a Joe?
I'll be honest. I don't know. You know, my knowledge of the Joes is extremely limited. I watched the live action film. I know some of the episodes. I've seen a few of them, but I was never really a big Joe fan.
Okay, let's move to Rose. Rose, who would you want to be?
I think I would want to be Snow Job because I've never gotten to see snow, and so I could like do the Arctic thing, and really. And besides, I think the name is really cool.
This is always, I'm getting these sort of comments from people who've never seen snow and how much they want to be there.
Come on,
well, with Jerome and I, hold on, Jerome. With Jerome and I coming from snow states, dear, and we lived in the snow for me half my damn life. You can have it. Go for it. You want to be Snow Job? Because you've never seen snow? Great answer.
Come on up, Rose.
For it. Good job. I want to be Hawk because I'm too old to be doing the physical crap. I just want to dish out the orders. I can run behind all of the charging pack and come in at the end of the people and go, okay, let's secure this area. You know, that's all I have to say. Let's secure the area, you know.
I do at some point want to talk about Cobra when you get a chance.
Let's wait until the movie portion of this. There's, of course, Slaughter. Of course, we have to talk about Cobra. We can't talk about the good guys if we don't talk about the bad guys.
Scarlett, every time I had ever watch it, Scarlett always came across to me as the brains of the outfit too. I was going to comment on that.
What are you trying to say? That Colonel Hawk here can't handle the plotting of some. Okay, all right. Jerome won't be with us next week. We really appreciate it. We really like that. Okay.
Hey, Chris King says Snake Eyes is the coolest, but too tragic to want to be him.
Yes. Well, you know what? Somebody explain to me, is there a reason why he's masked? Anybody know?
Something to do with his rival with the other guy there. I don't know.
Yeah, and I thought that was actually answered in one of the live action movies. I don't know. But of course, in the movie, we all know that Snake Eyes was Ray Park, who was Darth Maul in the Star Wars movies.
He was also Toad in the X-Men movies.
Yeah. Well, we know he's mute, or he just doesn't talk. I think it's a code that he's maintaining. I think. I wish Chris, you can give us some answers on this.
Chris says it's a chopper accident in Vietnam.
It affected both face and voice. Is basically what we're saying. Then. Wow. Okay. Chopper accident in Nam.
Yep, that's what he says.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. I love it. I love our fans when they educate this.
Hey,
all right.
And Terry says that he would like to be Beachcomber because you get to play on the obstacle course all day and shout at people.
Sounds like Terry. All right. Good job. But which one was Beachcomber? Because we're not. That's of course that's not Shipwreck, but I can't put in my brain which one was Beachcomber. Did we even show him?
I think Beachcomber might have been season 2, maybe. I'm not sure. But Chris says that the chopper accident in Vietnam was established in the comic for Snake Eyes.
Aha, established in the comic, but they never mentioned it in the cartoon, huh? Well, the comics came first anyway. So, okay. All right, cool. All right, now here's our last segment for this show, guys. And this is something pretty dear to my heart. And the reason that it is dear to my heart is because it has a kick-ass soundtrack. And you guys know how much I love movie soundtracks, especially when they're kick-ass. And this movie, which I did go to the theater to see, okay, along with the Transformer movies. Hold on, I'm watching someone walking across my grass out back. Anyway, never mind. Okay, the film. Here we go. G.I. Joe, the movie. Oh, let me put this up.
The animated movie.
Yes.
Got to clarify that because there was two live action films. So
right. Hey man, I don't have to clarify crap. Here we go. G.I. Joe the movie, a feature-length film version of the series, was intended to be released theatrically, followed by the release of the Transformers the movie. However, the movie encountered unexpected production delays, which allowed the Transformers feature to be released first. Due to the poor box office performances of the Transformers and My Little Pony film, G.I. Joe was relegated. What the hell has that got to do? No, anyway, G.I. Joe was relegated to direct-to-video status. Yep. It was released on VHS on April 20th of 1987 and was later split. I bet you a lot of our viewers weren't even old enough to go to the movies back in 1987. But it was later split into a 5-part miniseries for television syndication. The movie follows up on the events of season 2, revealing that Cobra Commander is actually an agent of a secret civilization known as Cobra Law, led by a half serpent being named. Let me finish, Jerome. Half serpent being named Globalus, whatever. The same organization is also revealed to have had a hand in the creation of Serpentor, because the dream that inspired Dr. Mindbender to create him was actually a subconscious suggestion that was implanted into his brain by one of Globalus's bugs.
I gotta find out.
Yes, very complicated.
Hold on. In addition to Cobra Law, 2 new sub-teams were introduced within the Joe team, the Rawhides and the Renegades, both of which were composed of characters which were introduced into the toy line during its 1987 lineup. Go ahead, Jerome. What was so funny?
I'm friends with the guy who one of the uncredited writers of this movie. I'm gonna have to talk to Buzz Dixon and find out what the heck was he thinking about with the whole Cobra Commander thing.
Hey, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't remember much of the movie, but it was the soundtrack that just stuck out that I just said, oh my God, this is so. You guys, like I always try to teach people, don't focus so much on the primary melody in any song, which gives you your beat, makes you tap your toes, your feet, or makes you clap. Go for the background. So I'm just going to yell out this one little thing here, and if you don't hear this, I'm going to smack you. Here we go. Cobra! Cobra!
Crashing through the sky comes a fearful cry. Cobra! Cobra! Armies of the night, evil taking flight. Cobra! Cobra! Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Panic spreading far and wide. Who can turn the tide? G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe, there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe, there. Fighting for freedom wherever there's trouble over land and sea and air. G.I. Joe is there. Can the world oppose the deadliest of foes? Cobra! Joes will risk it all to end the evil call of Cobra! They never give up, they never say die. Walking tall with banners high, they sound the battle cry. G.I. Joe there, G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there, fighting for freedom wherever there's trouble over land and sea and air. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained special mission force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
G.I. Joe there, G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe there, fighting for freedom wherever there's trouble over land and sea and air.
Wow. You really enjoyed yourself there, Mark.
Mark, we can't hear you. Mark, we can't hear you. Oh my God. Oh, I can see why there was problems with this one. We still can't hear you, Mark. Okay. Mark's having technical problems with his microphone.
It's from him saying too much Cobra.
I know.
Hey, while he's until he comes back up, I just wanted to say that Garrett said he would like to be Sergeant Slaughter. He said just ask his boys growing up. and Cheryl said she would probably be the Baroness.
Oh my God. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
If Garrett wants to be Sergeant Slaughter, he better put on 200 pounds. I've seen Garrett.
Cheryl wants to be the Baroness, huh?
Oh, that a girl. But wait a minute. Who? Sharon who?
Cheryl.
Oh, Cheryl wants to be the Baroness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see tight latex, boy. There you go. Good job, Cheryl. Squeeze into that one, baby.
And Terry said that Beachcomber, that character, was in the animated movie.
Oh, Beachcomber was only in the movie. Oh,
In the animated movie. He showed up in the animated movie.
Did you see who one of the stars of this movie was?
No.
Don Johnson.
he was a voice?
Yes, he was.
Voice?
Lieutenant somebody or other. Hang on a second here. Let me get back to that.
Lieutenant somebody.
Hey, look at this. Look at Cheryl. Look at Cheryl. Look
Lieutenant
at Cheryl.
Falcon.
Look at Cheryl.
I'm looking.
You see Cheryl?
All right. Yeah, fine. Lieutenant Falcon.
Lieutenant Falcon. How about that, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. But
Green Beret.
Well, Miami Vice was very big back then, so that.
that was
the
Miami Vice era.
In that film.
Yeah. That was the
Burgess.
80s.
It had Burgess Meredith in this movie.
Oh my God.
Burgess.
As Globulus.
Oh my God. Hey, who was Cobra Commander?
I'm trying to look that up right now.
Yeah, man. What an irritating voice for somebody commanding so many.
Oh my God. Cobra Commander kills me. Chris Latta played Gung Ho and Ripper.
Oh, yes, right. Okay. I remember I mentioned Chris Latta's name before.
Yeah, he was Starscreamer.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Starscream. That's why. That voice, Starscream, you hear it right there, you know.
I gotta ask you about Cobra, because this one's already bugged me. You got Destro and you've got Cobra Commander. Who's really in charge?
Well, it's actually Cobra Commander, but Destro did take over Cobra Commander's position at some point during the series.
It always seems like Cobra Commander is always, somehow being subservient to Destro.
I'm sorry, if you guys remember McHale's Navy, I think Cobra Commander as Captain Binghamton. Cobra Commander was Captain Binghamton.
And Cobra Commander always had always had this reflective face mask
or the hood.
Or the hood. And I love the hood. The hood was great.
It was a fashion statement, man. A guy can't go out there ruling the world with the same thing on every freaking day. Man, hey, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was our special on G.I. Joe, a real American hero.
We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah, when we get through the other we got through 13, but we can get through the other 200 members. Like, who the hell is that? See the guy in the middle?
So,
there's just so much you guys can do with
it. Makes me look like I'm looking at the Legion of Superheroes here, with all these and none of them was super powered, so that's pretty impressive for an elite team like this. But yeah, so once again, this was Saturday morning cartoon salute to G.I. Joe. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There are some first timers. Chris King, who actually provided us with a lot of informative information. You've educated us. We don't know everything about everything that we do, and we do rely on our audiences to either add to it or correct us on anything we may mention on the show. That's how we become more and more educated with our cartoon. Whose turn is it next week?
It's me.
First. Do you know what you're doing? Can you announce what you're doing?
I believe I'm going to be doing the tribute to Gene Deitch, who was a cartoonist for he did some Popeye and Tom and Jerry before he passed, and he just recently passed about a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, so he did. He was back in the 40s doing Tom and Jerry when Tom and Jerry.
He did some 60s. It was in the 60s.
So he worked with McKimson and Chuck Jones.
Yeah, really early on. He did I think about 13 episodes of Tom and Jerry, and he did some Popeye. So, and I think he also got an award for a short film. So I'm going to try to put that all together for next week.
Excellent. Well, anyway, so guys, thank you so much for joining us. We did our relative 90-minute show like we normally do. But on behalf of Rose and Jerome and myself, we thank you guys so much for joining us each and every week. Our regular Cartoon Krew people. Couldn't get your comments up on the screen this time, but we will next week. Thank you, guys. We'll be seeing you soon. Rose, Jerome, we don't have to hang around to talk. We know what we're doing for next week.
Yep. Bye.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See you guys. Ciao.